Peter, thank you for the time.
Michael, I'm delighted to be here.
I want to begin here with former U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, because before she died in 2021, she warned if the United States abandoned its commitment to democratic values, that it would essentially embolden autocrats around the world and discourage democratic movements around the world. Is that where we're at?
I haven't heard a Madeleine Albright quote for a while, but it's nice to hear her name. I don't know if you know this, Michael, but for a while I worked for the organization that Madeleine founded, the National Democratic Institute, that worked to promote democracy around the world. And, as Canadians, we might not appreciate this so much, but it is true. Around the world, American democracy is an inspiration for many, many people, and it has been for many, many years. And if the United States democracy is off track, that inspiration is lost. And it's right now, democracy in the United States is not on the agenda. But Michael, it's on the agenda here at Halifax. And that's what we're trying to do this weekend in our conversations, and the agenda that we've crafted is get democracy back on the agenda of politicians everywhere in the world.
Let's pick up on that point, because the theme for this year is that democracies don't despair. So what is the message that you hope the forum sends out, not only to the people gathered here in Halifax right now, but for the next calendar year and way beyond?
No, I think, Michael, I really appreciate the question, because you're exactly right. These conversations are not for a weekend and then go home and start something else. These conversations are designed, as exactly as you said, to go on throughout the year and beyond. The truth of the matter is, and sometimes we get a little shy about saying this, democracies are better. It's as simple as that. Democracies work. They provide, when they do work, they provide for their citizens. They make economies stronger. That gives people, countries, confidence. And that's what we're losing now, is we're losing a little bit of confidence in democracy itself. And we have to remind everybody that when it works, there's nothing that can work better. And I'm afraid that the United States is not the beacon of democracy that it once was, and not so long ago. But if there is a beacon for democracy now, it's Ukraine. And it's very important that the democracies stay together and continue to equip Ukraine so that Ukraine can end this war by winning this war.
Let's pick up on that point, because I think as the war continues and drags on, of course, for people in Ukraine and the neighboring countries, the threat is still very real. But for many countries farther away from Ukraine, the United States and Canada included, what is the importance of maintaining that support for the country?
So we haven't had this type of violence and attack on a country's sovereignty since the end of the Second World War. One of the things that the post-war environment created was a rules-based system. And if this aggression is allowed to stand, it's essentially the end of the rules-based system. And what does that mean? It means that big countries can do what they want. And Canada, that lives beside a very big country, it's not good for Canada. And so we can't go back to a pre-World War II world. We fought that war. We know what happens when big countries just take little countries. It leads to massive war. And that's what we're looking at if this aggression is allowed to stand. And we knew that at the outset of the war. Everybody's reaction when President Zelensky stood firm and said, "We are here," everybody knew instinctively that this couldn't stand. Yes, it's gone on now for way too long, but the Ukrainians are still fighting. And if the Ukrainians are still fighting, we should be supporting them. And the United States should be supporting them.
Okay, well, let's bring in Canada now into the discussion, because we've heard this government talk about a defense industrial strategy. When you hear that phrase, I'm wondering what comes to mind and what it says to you about the role Canada can play in terms of inspiring and preserving democratic, movements, not only here on this continent, but around the world.
Yeah, so Canada is in a little bit of a tough spot right now, to be honest. And the Prime Minister won on elbows up. And then some economic realities have come back, and he's got to worry about jobs, he's got to worry about the economy, and in many ways that is maintaining a relationship with the President of the United States. That is an important element of the Prime Minister's job. But I would argue another important element of the job is maintaining what are Canadian values and making sure that Canadian values, which are universal values of democracy, rule of law, human rights, that we don't surrender any of that, and that Canada can play its role as a beacon of democracy for the rest of the world.
Now, interestingly, you have here in Halifax 9 U.S. senators, and that essentially represents 10% of the American Senate. How important is that for you? How important is that for what you're trying to achieve with this forum?
It's huge. It's huge for us at the Halifax International Security Forum, but Michael, it's huge for Canada, and it's a sign that there is political life in the United States beyond the current administration. And this is a very, very strong signal. And by the way, that congressional delegation is half and half, Democrat, Republican, and it's a very strong signal of support for Canada. And it's and for the values that much of the United States, most of the United States, and Canadians and free people everywhere share.
Peter, thank you for the time. Good luck.
Michael, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.